Hi, and welcome to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I'm Dupe Witherick, alcohol free wellbeing and transformational coach, and the best selling author of A Cocktail of Clarity, How to Ditch Drinking, Embody a Joyful New Identity, and Thrive Alcohol Free. This podcast will show you that being alcohol-free is not what the traditional narrative says. And even though alcohol is so ingrained in our society that it is okay to give yourself permission to stop drinking if you want to. And you do not have to wait until you hit rock bottom. It is certainly not boring, and I believe ditching drinking is just the start to living an extraordinary life. By getting rid of this one thing, it allows the doors to open to endless possibilities and opportunities. Each week, we will have guests on who are at various stages of the alcohol-free journey, from those who are curious to those who have been alcohol-free for years. We will also have experts on talking about different topics relating to alcohol and beyond. Through these conversations, you will discover what it means to thrive alcohol-free. Enjoy. Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. I hope you're having a good week. I've been full of cold this week, so it's not been great. And prior to that, my little toe wasn't very good, so I haven't been able to run for like 2.5 weeks now, and I'm meant to be doing the London Marathon on the 21st of April, so I'm beginning to panic, having had 3 weeks off, but hoping I'll be able to get back into it and start training again. If you've got any tips on how to get back into running, having 3 weeks off, just as you're preparing for a marathon, then let me know. I'd love to hear. Anyway, I'm just going to get out there, and hopefully once I get over this cold, then I'll be back running and raring to go again. So this week I have Kiola Raines on the podcast, and she's going to be talking all things nutrition and health, which is fantastic. So early on in Kiola's sobriety journey, she discovered the power of using fitness and nutrition to sustain long-term recovery. Effective goal setting, proper nutrition planning, and mindful movement are the foundations of her highly personalised coaching method. And so Kiola will give you tools, knowledge, and support that you need to achieve successful sobriety, along with the healthy lifestyle that you deserve. And so we will get on to Kiola's conversation in a moment, but I wanted to remind you that there are still places for the Finding Freedom retreat in Bali in July. So I do hope you will look at that and consider joining. I know it's going to be a highly immersive and transformative experience, and you will come back changed. It's going to be incredible. You could also join the March cohort of the 21-day alcohol-free kickstart, which will be starting with the group coaching sessions on the 5th of March. But prior to that, you can do your one-to-one coaching session where we really talk about where you are and how to get started and discuss any questions that you might have. If you're interested in either of those, the links for those are in the bio. So without further ado, here is the conversation with Kiola. Hi, Kiola. It's so wonderful that you're here on the podcast. Lovely to meet you. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm joining you virtually from Los Angeles, California. Sunny, and even though it's winter, it's about 60 degrees. So
60,
doing
that's
pretty
quite
good.
low, isn't it? 10 degrees, that's about 10 degrees Celsius for us. So
I'll say it's low for a California girl.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
low for you. That's what I mean. Yeah,
but
no,
I'm going to Minneapolis in a week, and in Minneapolis it's like 30
oh,
degrees. So that is going to be a shock to the system. But I'm up for
oh,
the adventure.
yeah, well, we were -6 this morning. So yeah, it's pretty cold here.
Goodness.
So 10 degrees sounds wonderful at the moment. I think I could take that. And of course, it's always lovely and sunny in LA. So that's the main thing, really. I love the fact you can still go for walks on the beach and things like that. Okay, so for people that don't know you, why don't you fill them in, tell them who you are and what brings you onto this podcast?
Yes. So I'll start with that piece. How did we get connected? And it's all through sober social media. Ultimately, one of the things that I did early on in my journey, in my sobriety journey, was I didn't follow the encouragement to remain anonymous about my journey. I broke that right away on the first day that I started this round, I'll say, this leg of the journey, and that has opened up so many doors for me. So, I'm Kiola Raines. I am a host in the Luckiest Club. I'm also a course instructor in the Luckiest Club, which is a sobriety support community. Before I made my way into hosting and facilitating in sobriety support spaces, I worked in fitness and nutrition as a coach and a nutrition coach, group exercise instructor, gym owner, wellness promoter, all of those things. I was doing all of those things while moving through my own alcohol use disorder, unaware of how strong that disorder was and how much of a negative impact it was having not only on myself but on people around me. And over the last 5 years, I have created an entire new life for myself, fallen into this career of hosting and facilitating. And most recently, I've started moving towards my roots back into my foundation of fitness and nutrition coaching. I'll actually start taking clients again in February. So I'm excited about that, to get back to the roots of my coaching, but also be able to implement the things that I love so much, like movement and nutrition science and nutrition education, to help folks who are on a sobriety or an alcohol-free journey, folks who are in recovery. I want to be able to teach them how important it is to use food and movement to support that. It's beyond body composition. It's really about embodying ourselves, getting into our bodies, not being afraid of our bodies, and also using food to support brain health and gut health, which ultimately can help with your mood, which ultimately can help with your relationship with any substance really, but I speak specifically to alcohol. So, coach, host, and facilitator. I'm also a mom of a 3-year-old in a amazing long-term relationship with my partner, and sister and an auntie and a lover of personal space and quiet time.
I love
I
that.
love me I love me time and personal space. So yeah, those are just a few things, but a lot of people will probably have either seen or heard my voice in one of the several virtual sobriety support spaces, and now I've landed and created a really great home in the Luckiest Club, also known as TLC. It's a space created by Laura McCowan, author of We Are the
Mhm.
Luckiest. So
Yeah.
that is one of the best things that's happened in my sobriety journey. It's just a very supportive community. We're very valued as facilitators and as community leaders, not just by the company, but by the community as well. And I really feel like I'm just at home there. So I'm glad to be able to share in that space and do what I love to do and have a community to do it in.
Yeah. Hashtag we are the luckiest. I think
Yeah.
that book is amazing. And yeah, that space as well. I know a couple of people who have facilitated and I think it's a great space. So well done you. Brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah.
Um, wow. So where do we start with all that information?
I know.
That's great. I'd be curious. You said that you didn't stay anonymous. You just went straight out then. Was that from an accountability perspective or what was it? And then how did you find the community when you went out and said, right, this is what I'm doing?
Yeah. That was, yes, accountability for sure, because it wasn't the first time that I had embarked on a journey to abstaining from alcohol. And I was not quiet about my drinking. I wasn't anonymous about that until the end, started being a little more sneaky and secretive about it, but it wasn't
Mm,
like I was saying that I wasn't drinking. I would just do it, in my own space. I'm also a rebel, and I was much more rebellious at that time. Like, oh, that's what's I'm supposed to keep this quiet. Well, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to
mm,
talk about it. So there was part of that too. Mostly it was, I need people around me to know that I'm doing this and I'm doing it for real. and I am taking every measure. So if you see me drinking, check me kind of a thing. And I'm not going to be ashamed. I
Mm,
grew up in a household with a parent who was moving through their own addiction and in the process of recovery, and there was a lot of shame there. We didn't talk about it. And so I had my own feelings about it. It was just never really discussed thoroughly, and I knew that I didn't want that for myself. To watch someone who is your caretaker and see that they're feeling bad about their decisions, but not see any pride or joy around the recovery piece. I felt like that was something I didn't want to miss out on. Like, I'm not going to be ashamed that this is my story. And one of the only reasons that I started my journey is because a high school friend of mine posted their, I think maybe 1 or 2 year sobriety chip. And I just thought, wow, like this was this star athlete at my high school and, Mr. Popular, and everyone wanted to be around this person. So charismatic. I would have never thought that this was their story. But you just never know what's going on in someone's life. And this is, 15 years after high school.
mm,
Didn't keep in touch with this person regularly, but because they had the courage to talk about it or post that this is what was happening for them, I saw that, and just something for me just said, like, it's okay. You're allowed to have this challenge, and you're allowed to talk about it. It doesn't have to be a secret. So that's what it's accountability, but also breaking the stigma. I'm not going to ever back down on the fact that it's not someone's fault that they fell into an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, but like the 9 things in We Are the Luckiest says, it is your responsibility. So we don't need to be ashamed. If someone has some other kind of mental health disorder, we don't shame them. Like, how dare you have anxiety? How dare you
mm,
have depression? But when it comes to alcoholism, addiction, substance use, somehow the world has flipped that around and it's the person's fault
mm,
rather than something that's going on a, deeper emotional, mental health level or a disorder. So wanted to just be a voice to show people that that gym owner, that person with the healthy lifestyle, that person with the degrees and making their dreams come true, you never know that there could be this other thing that is eating them alive because they're not talking about it. Not all of this looks the same. There are a lot of very successful people that are moving through challenging relationships with substances, and I was okay with standing up and being a face and a name and a voice
mm.
for this journey to sobriety. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And you're right. I mean, there's a huge stigma around sobriety, and people automatically jump to so many conclusions when you say you're not drinking. And a lot of them couldn't be further than the truth. But it is that it's just the way that I think people justify their own drinking as well.
Yeah.
And so when you came out and told everyone and was, without abandon, just sort of went, right, this is me, which I love, by the way. I think it's fantastic. And I do think when you stop drinking, it does make you brave and it makes you authentic and just able to stand in your own power. So I absolutely love that about your story. What was the reaction of people? And you said your life has completely changed in the past 5 years. You've created a whole new life with your words. So
Yeah.
tell us a bit about that and what's happened since.
Yeah. So definitely lots of support and encouragement from my family, especially because, my parents picked me up from jail once. My little sister picked me up from jail a different time. I had started breaking down relationships with family members from my actions, my attitude, the person that I was when I was drinking, and the after effects, because it wasn't always just when I was drinking that I had this very arrogant, big ego attitude that just lingered, for days after because my anxiety was really high. So I was irritable and I was frustrated. And then I thought I would lean into like thinking I'm better than everybody as a defense mechanism. So of course my family was like, thank goodness. Great. Finally, lots of support there. People who I had worked with or trained as a coach or an instructor who maybe had their own ideas. I really don't know if my clients and members at my gym knew that there was something going on with me. I never have asked anyone, but also got encouragement there, just kind of like, wow, that's very brave to come out and post this 24-hour chip
Mm.
and openly say, I'm gonna step away from this business, I'm gonna step away from this leadership position because I can't do this right now. So a lot of respect there because again, that vulnerability, it's scary, but it is respected. And when you experience speaking up and saying, "This isn't working for me," you'll see the right people will rally around you. People who benefit from you staying in that sickness or staying without boundaries, or people who benefit from you staying quiet, they might not support you. But the people who want to see you at your best, they will support you. And again, because I have always been loud and open and speaking. The things I was speaking about were mostly around fitness, nutrition, social justice. It turned to me taking care of myself and being my best self. So there was always support and encouragement there. I didn't really get any pushback or, well, are you sure you have a problem? People knew that were close to me that this was a good decision for me, and the people that weren't in my circle directly supported the fact that I wasn't ashamed to talk about it. So lots of
Mm.
support and encouragement from the beginning. My that day one 24-hour chip, it's still on my Instagram page. If you just
Yeah.
scroll to the bottom, it's
Mhm.
still there, and I was like, this is it. If I look around my life and see all that I've accomplished while drinking, just imagine what is possible for me without drinking, and I just kinda
Mm.
left that there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's fantastic and really encouraging, I think, from the person listening, because a lot of people choose not to take a step and choose not to make that decision to take a break from drinking or stop drinking completely, whatever the decision is, because they worry about the reactions of people. So hearing that you had such a positive
yeah,
reaction from people will hopefully encourage the person that's listening as well. That's really great. So you mentioned nutrition and health a lot. So I'd love to dig into that. And of course, when you stop drinking, you do start thinking about health and wanting to get those dopamine hits and the serotonin and all of that in a different way, in a more positive way. And exercise is crucial for that. So maybe you want to talk a bit about nutrition and exercise and things like that that would be helpful
yeah,
for the listener.
definitely. So, I'll start with one, I came into this journey with a master's in exercise psychology, certification as a nutrition coach through Precision Nutrition, and I was teaching these things to folks not only as clients, but I was actually teaching certification courses for folks who wanted to become trainers. And so that was my life. I was running a gym, and that's all I ever saw myself doing was being a fitness and nutrition coach. That's just thing I was going to do, and I was happy doing it. So it's very ironic that I was misusing alcohol for 20 years. When I started my sobriety journey, I realized there are a lot of people that are doing things that are facing the audience as supportive and encouraging: doctors, nurses, a lot of healthcare practitioners. I thought,
Yeah.
wow, okay, so it's not just me. But because of either the high stress or the high anxiety or other traumas, we found this thing that was soothing to us and fell into this unhealthy cycle with it. What I didn't realize was how powerful nutrition and movement could be for supporting sobriety. I didn't realize that I would get to use these things that I'm so passionate about that I already was teaching to help folks to support their recovery or sobriety or alcohol-free lifestyle.
Mm.
So the first thing that happened for me when I that made me realize, okay, I'm going to have to do something more was the sugar cravings that come.
Yeah.
So you experienced that?
Not as much as others, but my clients experience it and we talk about it all the time, and it is very normal. It's a very normal thing because people underestimate the amount of sugar that is in alcohol. When you stop drinking alcohol,
Yeah.
then you do get those sugar cravings, and
Yeah.
it's what are the alternatives? So I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
Yeah. So not only what's in alcohol, but it's the source of dopamine in that you need something new to crave and to chase. And your brain is asking you, well, if you're not going to pursue that drink, because essentially that's what we're learning dopamine
Mm,
actually is, it's not as much as the reward as we thought it was. It's the thrill of the chase. It's the
mhm,
desire, the one,
mm,
ooh, yes, I want that. That's when we're getting the flood.
yeah,
So now that you're not chasing that thing, your brain is asking you for something else. And our brains and guts are extremely intelligent. They communicate with each other. And a really easy source for that is food. And an even better source for that high release is sugar. And
mm,
so here come those cravings. I
mm,
came in as someone who never had a sweet tooth, but every now and then I have dessert or candy, but I was more of like a savory, salt and vinegar kind of a person, garlic and gravies and things like that. I just could not, even with understanding what I understood about food, I didn't understand what I know now about the brain and neurotransmitters
mm,
and gut health. What I was
mm,
teaching was basics around how to create a healthy meal plan for yourself, how to create a
mhm,
meal plan to improve your health, but not so much neurotransmitters and the
mm,
brain. That piece
yeah,
was not my expertise. Now that's what I'm moving towards, that understanding. So I was asking, well, why are these sugar cravings happening? And bless their hearts, the folks in the space I was in, they said, "Oh, honey, just drink some coffee and eat a donut. It'll go away. Those will go." And I'm like, that is not enough for me. I am a lifelong learner. This answer is not going to cut it. So started exploring and taking courses and working with experts in nutrition to understand what was really going on, and pairing that with what I understood about food, that opened up this entire knowing that we need to almost immediately start planning the food piece. As soon as you consider changing your relationship with alcohol, you just as quickly need to start considering, what am I going to put in place so that I can face the cravings, manage the cravings, and give my body what it needs so we can limit those. A really great resource that I can offer off the bat, this book just came out. It's by Dr. Brooke Scheller. It's called How to Eat to Change How You Drink. That's going to be a great resource. I took her course called the Functional Sobriety Academy. And in the Functional Sobriety Academy, I learned so much about using food to improve brain health, to improve gut health, which ultimately can decrease your use of alcohol. It can help to limit cravings, it can help to improve gut health, which also will help to limit cravings. It can help to improve neurotransmitter release, which can also help to decrease cravings. So when you're doing those things, if you're in a good mood and you have energy and you're generally have a positive outlook on life, you won't be leaning into, you won't be reaching for, you feel good, you just
mm,
kind of feel chill. So number one thing is going to be to start considering your nutrition plan. And I think one of the best things that you could do is to start journaling, to start writing down the things that you're eating. You can start becoming aware of what your day to day intake looks like. And if it's something that is available to you as a resource, maybe consider working with a nutrition coach or a registered dietitian. If you are seeing some gaps, if you are having lots of food cravings, if you are having an unhealthy relationship with food, I highly recommend reaching out to, I would say specifically a registered dietitian first, and they may encourage coaching or something like that. But one thing I can offer you when it comes to decreasing those sugar cravings is protein. Protein, protein, and more protein. That is the macronutrient that the average person is not getting enough of. And if we can be open to starting our day within about 30, a maximum an hour of waking up, having some kind of a meal that's high in protein, between on the low end, 25, on the higher end, about 40 grams. That's a big window, but it's a good place to start. Having a meal that has a nice, healthy serving of protein in it, and then being open to eating about every 3 hours or so. That piece is where maintaining a healthy blood sugar balance is going to help with mood and energy, bringing in plenty of protein. is the thing that's going to help our body to produce neurotransmitters like GABA and serotonin and dopamine. We need protein to pair with amino acids so that our brains can make those neurotransmitters, and be open to putting some effort and energy and intention into creating a plan that's sustainable for you. So, number one thing, start journaling, start writing these things down, start being aware. Number two, I would say go right into getting protein into your plan consistently throughout the day, starting within about at the most an hour, say 30 minutes to an hour of waking up, about 25 to 40 grams of protein. And then if it's available to you, reaching out for some support with a dietitian. If that's not available to you, get that book, How to Eat to Change How You Drink. That's going to be a good resource. There's recipes and just really great. I know that's a lot on the food nutrition piece. Do you have any questions on that
Yeah, that's
stuff?
really, really helpful. And I absolutely agree. And I think you talked about eating every 3 hours. I tend to say you want to definitely have the 3 meals a day. It's not about skipping food as
No.
well, and the protein with every meal, as you said. But every 3 hours, that's snacking in between as well. Maybe we want to talk about that. Or is that
Yeah.
meals every 3 hours?
So I don't label meal versus snack. It's just food.
Yeah,
I call it, my coach calls it feeding times. It sounds
right.
more like you're a farm animal. Essentially, it doesn't, the size of what you're eating, just eat something.
Mm,
So the person who says, well, I don't really like breakfast food, so I skip breakfast. Well, then have a turkey sandwich then at that hour. It doesn't have to be cereal or
mm,
waffles. It doesn't have to be breakfast potatoes. It doesn't have to be
mm,
eggs. If you
mm,
don't like breakfast food, then have some chicken at that time. Have a tuna sandwich at that time. Eat something. What
mm.
I teach people to focus on is the macronutrient makeup.
Yeah.
So you're having first thing in the morning, you're having on a lower end 25 grams, on a higher end about 40 grams of protein. Whether that comes from chicken or fish or a vegan or plant-based source, go for it.
Mm,
About 3 hours later, you want to have maybe 20 grams of protein again, somewhere around there, 15 to 20. If you're exercising, within about an hour of exercising, again, you want to have another about 35, 40 grams of protein. So those numbers, those ranges are going to be different because what I need based on the way I'm training and my height, weight, and age is going to be different than what you need for the day. So you
mm,
take your big number. I'll use my number. My number is about 145 grams of protein. I
mm,
need to break that down into eating around every 3 to 4 hours and spread that 140 grams throughout my eating every 3 to 4 hours, depending on how long I'm awake. So again, there's flexibility in that, but it doesn't have to be defined as snack or a meal because you
mm,
might not be into eating small amounts. Maybe you like to have a lot of food right when you wake up. And then 4 hours later, you like to have another big chunk of food. And then 4 hours later, you like to have another big chunk, and that's it. Some people want to have a little bit, just a high protein meal,
mm,
just a high protein serving. And then 2 hours later, they want a little bit more. And then 3 hours later, they want kind of medium, then something a little smaller. So it's very customizable. Anyone who tells you that it's a one size fits all thing, run the other way. That
mm,
is not the case. There is no one nutrition plan. They all work if you stick to them and follow them. Anything can benefit you. It doesn't have to just be a one size fits all thing. So there is
mm.
flexibility with that, from smaller servings to larger servings. It will work.
Yeah.
Good question.
That's really helpful. And I love feeding time. That'll stick.
Feeding. Yeah. Yeah, that's, I'll just on that, my coach that I work with is a very old school ex-military bodybuilder, competitor, and so he pushes a lot of his clients, not all, to change the way we look at food, that it is
Mm,
here as the tool to give your body the information that it needs. And he is a person that eats the same thing every day. That doesn't work for me all the time. I go through periods of that specifically
mm,
for training. But again, you have to be very careful with that. We need to be mindful of relationship to food. We need to be mindful of disordered eating. So those are not things that I encourage folks that are, especially at the beginning of a sobriety recovery journey.
mm.
We need to eat.
Yeah.
That's what our focus is, eat.
Yeah.
Get the
Exactly.
food in, get the nutrients in, start considering your gut health, your brain health, and finding ways to use food to support those. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even encourage someone at the beginning of a sobriety journey to think about changing their body composition.
Yeah.
What the focus is at the beginning of this big life changing experience is health, improving your health, sustaining your health, giving your brain what it needs, giving your gut what it needs, finding ways to keep your mood balanced, finding ways to keep your blood sugar balanced. We don't need to even think about the scale or just eat, have nourishment, make that consistent and steady throughout the day, sustain that for a while, and then we can think about something like changing your body composition.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. I think it's really making not drinking being the non-negotiable and the focus with good food. And so absolutely agree with what you said. That's fantastic. So that's on the nutrition side. Is there anything else that would be
No, I think that's
helpful?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. Start noticing what you're eating, prioritize protein, and get that book.
Yeah, sounds like a great book. We'll put the link in the show notes for that as well. So that's great.
Yeah.
Really helpful recommendation. And from a fitness perspective, fitness and exercise, I'd love to
Mhm.
get your perspective on that too.
Yeah. I think the key word with the movement piece is embodiment. It's one of the 5 pillars of sobriety that we teach in the Luckiest Club. And in that, we're thinking of how we can connect our minds and our bodies. A lot of times when we're drinking, there's a disconnection from our physical body and our mind. We're used to being outside of ourselves. And with embodiment practices, you are thinking of the ways that you can get back into this body and create a healthy relationship and communication with those two things. So, it doesn't have to be about intense exercise all the time. If that's something that you enjoy and you were already doing, of course, continue doing that. But if you're coming into this sobriety and alcohol free lifestyle and you weren't doing much movement at all, my encouragement for you is to consider the things that you enjoy doing or that you could come to enjoy doing that you will do consistently and that are sustainable for you. So, I love lifting weights. I always have. That's always been something I've enjoyed doing. So for me, going to do an intense workout that's weight focused is great. I'm not opposed to yoga, but the way my mind works, I want to move quickly and swiftly and get super sweaty. And I know there are forms of yoga that make that possible, but that's not my go-to. So if someone's saying, well, yoga is the way, that is the thing that's going to keep you sober, also run the other way because there's no one thing that's going to keep everybody sober. Some people like running, some people like Zumba, some people love yoga, and that's fantastic. But you have permission to move in whatever way is enjoyable for you and sustainable for you. So, my encouragement in that is get curious, find the thing that's going to allow you to move for about 30 minutes at a moderate intensity. And this is the encouragement from American College of Sports Medicine, who give us our standards on movement. About 30 minutes most days of the week at a moderate intensity. And that's also something that's going to be different for each person when it comes to knowing what your heart rate is, what your max heart rate is. So that's something that you can get clear on. There are calculators. If you just go online and Google max heart rate, there's calculators that'll help you with that. And also with finding your range, but focus on most days about 30 minutes and movement that you enjoy. So whether that's yoga or weightlifting or running or a dance class or swimming or whatever it is, just find something that you can commit to doing. The other thing I'll say with the movement piece and becoming embodied is also be open to some kind of stillness practice. So that's the opposite of moving, but it gives you permission to let your mind move without you trying to control it, because a lot of us are using alcohol to try to control our mind and stop it from moving. But if we give ourselves permission to sit still for a moment and let it do its thing, we can become more comfortable with the fact that it's going, and we are able to create an understanding that our mind is one thing and our body is one thing, and then we as a person are another thing, and we want all three of those things to exist together and be able to bring them all into to practice together. But it's okay if the mind is kind of doing one thing sometimes, as long as you understand that your mind is not you. Your mind is not you. It's saying and thinking things, and then you're noticing what it's saying and thinking. And that stillness practice as a part of your embodiment is something else you want to start to consider. Whether that starts with 2 minutes, because that's what's comfortable for you, and leads up to 15 or 20 minutes, it's okay for that to be a journey, but that's something to consider as well. Get those things done at the top of your day, as early in your day as possible. It's more likely to happen if you get it done at the top of your day. I understand some folks' schedules might not allow for it. And if you know that you can stay committed to something in the evening or something that happens after work, then that's fine as well. But just an encouragement to consider, if you can get it done first thing in the morning, there's a good chance that you'll be able to check that off the list rather than trying to come back to it after like a long day of work or parenting or whatever else you might have on your agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really helpful. So you're saying 30 minutes of exercise, whatever that is, whatever you enjoy, find it. And I would suggest as well, just, try lots of different things. It's a great opportunity to discover what you really like and what you don't like, and quickly say no to things as well that you really don't enjoy when you do them. And then the
Yes,
stillness practice is, so are we talking about breathing, meditating? Maybe you want to go into
both.
that a little bit more.
Yeah, both and all of the above. So, meditation does not have to be sitting. You could be lying down in your bed. You could be standing. Some people do like walking meditation, but goal is for you to give yourself permission to notice your thoughts. Notice the sensations. Notice how you're feeling. Notice what it feels like to breathe. So I would encourage that if there was any music or sound, that there were no lyrics to it. I also would encourage the practice of nothing but you and those thoughts for as long as you can stand it. So some people have a minute or 2 minutes and I'm done. There's a lot going on, but that's a good practice to get in, maybe journal afterwards and write down what came up. Breath work exercises could be great. Following prompts could be helpful. Either one, breath work or stillness. I think the biggest thing I encourage is getting used to nothing happening for a moment in time, because a lot of people will bring up the word boredom, and I'm so bored now that I'm not drinking. Like what do I do? And you need to get used to being bored. So that practice of being still and being quiet and being simply with your thoughts is a tool to help you get comfortable with being with your thoughts, to get comfortable with not a lot going on around you, and understanding that that's peace, that is serenity, and it's okay. A lot of us were in chaos for so long. The idea of sitting and breathing for 3 minutes and focusing on our breath is foreign to us, or sitting and not focusing on your breath, but just sitting and being with yourself and being still is so foreign to us. We started to think that our thoughts were us, and we started to believe everything that we thought. This encouragement is for you to notice the thoughts and hear them, and not try to force them to quiet down or force them to do anything, but just be still. Be with the thoughts. So if breath work is a part of that to get you prepared for that, great. I think that there are 2 different practices. So the breathing exercise and then just the stillness and being exercises. One can prepare you for the other, or you could go right into one without the other. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that boredom is actually peace. I think that's really, I heard that recently as well. Someone else said that. And I just think it's such a good way of looking at it because, to your point, a lot of people suddenly find they've got all this time and space after they stop drinking, and they automatically think, well, I'm bored. But you're right, it isn't boredom, is it? It's
Yeah.
that whole actually being with yourself. And I think that's what people struggle with, being with themselves, being in their emotions, really, uh, to your point, noticing thoughts that maybe they wouldn't notice before because they would run away from them in some way.
Mhm.
But it's really key, and I think it's a fantastic point, and not many people know that your mind is not you. And
Mm.
that is just something that I think is unknown. And actually, it is only when
Yeah.
you start practicing all these things that you start to realize that it's the ego, and that actually you are more than your mind, and you can
Yeah.
control your thoughts. And actually, it's your thoughts that then control your actions and your behavior and basically your life. And so,
Mhm.
I think that's a really, really great point that you made there about you not being your mind, because I think a lot of people think they are, and they think that their thoughts, because they are mainly automatic thoughts, and you work on a subconscious level most of the time, you're not conscious of everything, because 90% of all our actions in a day are subconscious, that we just
Mhm.
assume and expect that that is reality. And we actually have the ability within ourselves to change that reality and to switch the dial once you know that. So I'm really pleased you brought that up. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think that's really helpful. If someone is thinking that sounds like a lot, 30 minutes a day, exercise most days, stillness as well, how do they gradually, I always think you want to chunk it up. It's a bit like,
Mm.
habit stacking and all of that, in terms of Atomic Habits book by James Clear is a useful one. But
Yeah.
what would you suggest people would, nutrition and embodiment? I love the way you talk about embodiment and in movement as opposed to exercise, or I think it's a really lovely way of framing it, because then that does cover so many things. But how would someone get started, especially when they're thinking, well, I'm just trying to focus on not drinking for now and maybe
Mhm.
eating some good food, but adding on the embodiment and the movement?
Yeah, there's someone thinking like there's so much. So you want me to eat more protein
Yeah.
within an hour of waking up, and you want me to move for 30 minutes on most days, and then give myself a moment to also pause and be still. And now you're telling me that my mind is not me and that boredom is actually peace. That's a lot. Can we?
Exactly.
And
I
I'm
don't want
also
to
not
scare the
drinking.
listener off.
Yeah, did I mention that I'm also not drinking? So my encouragement is to start with the practice that is the most important to you. So the one that's calling you the most. If you came into this sobriety journey and you were already someone who was moving, but you were not really mindful of your nutrition, you've got the movement piece. Continue doing the movement piece and
Mm,
start thinking about what it is that you're intaking. So start with that piece. If
mm,
you came into this journey and you have not been moving and you have not been paying attention to the way you're eating, there's a lot of chaos around you, and you fully lean into anything that you're thinking, and you feel like your mind is you, my encouragement would be the stillness practice,
mm,
because the last thing I want to tell you to do is add in something that requires more action
mm,
when you're already taking the action of abstaining.
mm,
So, waking up and giving yourself 60 seconds, even 60 seconds, to just lie there or sit there or stand, whatever feels grounding for you.
mm,
Set that timer for 60 seconds and just stand there or just sit there or just lie there and be still. Thoughts are going to be going. Your brain is going to be going. Your mind is going to be going. Now you have an opportunity to start creating that understanding that you are the person, you are the being that is noticing the thoughts.
mm,
And that could help to lead you to, well, what's the next move that I want to make? That could lead you to starting to ask questions. That could lead you to starting to redevelop or reconnect with your intuition, redevelop the relationship and the communication with your intuition. And from that stillness practice, the next thing that could come is your body saying to you, I'd like to move a little. Let's stretch. Or your
Mm,
body saying to you, I'm actually hungry. And you generally don't eat for 3 hours because you ignore this because you wake up and you get on your phone and you start answering emails. And so you didn't even realize that I was hungry this whole time, or I
mm,
wanted to stretch this whole time, or what I really wanted was some water.
mm,
So that stillness practice could be the first thing to start implementing if you come into this journey with all of these other pieces not in alignment.
mm,
Maybe you came into this experience and you've been pretty mindful about your nutrition and you know that you're taking care of yourself in that arena, but you haven't really been moving much. And so consider the time of day that you can move, what you're curious about doing, whether that's yoga or walking or dancing or something outdoors, whatever that might be. Start with that piece.
mm,
So the person who doesn't have anything in place, I would encourage the stillness piece. The person who has maybe one or two of the other things, either the food or the movement, go to the thing that's missing or go to the thing that's calling you and start implementing that piece. And I will say though, even the person who is aware of their nutrition, like I was aware. I mean, I was a nutrition coach for goodness sake, but I didn't know that when I stopped drinking I needed to be even more mindful about my protein intake, that I need to be even more mindful about my blood sugar balance, that I needed to be more mindful about eating things that were going to allow my brain to create neurotransmitters that I didn't know, because that's
mm,
the brain health piece.
mm.
And so even that person could be mindful about protein intake, but start with the thing that's calling you most. And if everything is overwhelming, a 100% start with the stillness piece. That's
Yeah,
going to be the place to start.
really helpful. I think that's great. So hopefully there's a takeaway there. You could, depending on where you are, start with one of those things, and you quite quickly see that difference as well if you are consistent. I think consistency compounds, and you can quite quickly see the difference in stillness. And you start off with those
Mhm.
60 seconds, you might even find, a week later you're up to 2, 3 minutes, and that feels
Exactly.
right. Yeah,
That's exactly
perfect.
it.
Perfect. So I'd love to touch on the fact that you said, and this has stuck with me, that you said that you created a whole new life in the past 5 years. So can you talk about a few highlights that have created that? And I know you also work on goal setting. So maybe for someone who's a bit further along on the journey, who has stopped drinking for a while now and is thinking, what next? I'd love to get your
Mhm.
perspective on that and what they could potentially be thinking about.
Yeah. So the whole new life piece ultimately comes around living a peaceful, joyful, happy, and serene life. Those were not words I would use to describe my life when I was drinking. Not that I never laughed. I had moments where I would laugh and moments where I was happy. I experienced peace if I was in certain places at certain times, but it's a part of my being now. I gave myself permission to be peaceful and to be calm and to, even though I'm a high energy person, my mind is not going all the time like it used to. I've learned to accept anxiety and that I'm a person that lives with it. I don't identify as someone who struggles with it. That's just my own neuro linguistic programming around that. My life is completely different because I don't drink. And since I don't drink, I don't make my anxiety worse. And since I don't drink, I face challenges. Since I don't drink, I feel my feelings. And over 5 years of time, I've learned ways to cope with those feelings so that I can experience happiness and just be a generally happy person, be a generally peaceful person and, joyful. Like I'm not afraid of joy. I'm not afraid to share that. Brene Brown says that that's one of the emotions we fear the most is joy, because that if we're joyful, then that's not going to last. And then that means something bad has to happen. But I'm like, well, I'm willing to risk it. I'm willing to risk. I'm down to be as happy as I can be and
Mm,
just be an optimistic person. where I used to live for other people and try to keep my parents happy and check the boxes of life. I need to get a bachelor's degree, then I need to get a master's degree, I need to open a business, I need to check all these things and do is very rigid. I was just very like stuck in my head. And now I live in this whole entire body. And there's just more of a lightness in my life that wasn't there before. Part of it was things I was creating. It's
Mm.
not my fault that I fell into that pattern, using a substance at 15, thinking this is what cool kids are doing. I didn't know that I was going to overuse it, misuse it, and have alcohol use disorder. I didn't know that. I just thought I was having a good time. But I also didn't know that I had anxiety. I also at 15 didn't understand trauma. And because I was so unaware of those things and ignorant to those things, I would make decisions that kept my life chaotic. So fast forward from day one to just recently celebrating 5 years in recovery on the first of this year, the difference is head to toe. The difference is inside out. It's who I choose to be around. It's the things I choose to consume. It's the conversations that I am learning to have. The conversations I'm learning time out that's not for me or not right now at least. Boundaries. Huh, what a concept. What a concept. My parents did not teach me boundaries. They did not give an example of boundaries. Boundaries is that is the tool for life. Protect you,
Mm.
protect your energy, and give you the ability to live your life in your own little space. It's not about keeping people out like a brick wall, but it's about that safety bubble, to protect your energy. And I have boundaries now. I didn't used to have. I have self-awareness now. I'm constantly working on the emotional sobriety piece, the emotional intelligence piece, which means I'm learning the triggers and learning to notice when something is changing my emotional state and then to respond rather than react. No, this is a lot of things, but I mean, that's what's different about my life. That is why I live a completely different life. I'm living in the space that I visualized down to the color of my desk that I sat one day. I mean, I'll have to come back and tell the story of my my downward spiral, but there was a moment of just darkness where I said I'm going to visualize where my life will be like in the future, and I'm going to have this white desk and a white bookcase, and it's going to be a nice light colored room, and I'll have all my stuff up on the walls, and I'm going to get it together. I'm going to get out of this like dark hole that I'm in. And then I mean I look around and that's it. I sit here with my little white desk chair and my white desk and my white bookcase, and those things are here and real. And not because I like snapped my fingers and burned sage. I did those things too. But it's the work. It's the showing up in meetings, it's the sharing, it's the fellowship, it's the not being afraid to talk about this. It's just the slashing down the stigma and just like pushing all of that. Like, no, I am not ashamed that this happened to me, that this is my story. And it gives me access to that peace and that serenity and that joy and that happiness. So yeah, if people who knew me 10 years ago would say she's got the same energy as far as like I'm happy, I'm not shy, but they will also know it's more of a contained flame like a lantern
Mm.
rather than a dumpster fire. That is what so like I've always been bright, but I was burning people. Now I'm leading people, and that's the difference.
Oh, I love that. A lantern rather than a dumpster fire. Love that.
That's
And I
that's it.
it's a great, great quote. And I can see choose happiness on your wall as well. So I love that you talked about just living a peaceful, joyful, happy, serene life. That's brilliant. Okay, so did you want to touch on the Luckiest Club and what you're doing there? And if people
Yeah.
want to find out a bit more about that?
Definitely. Come and hang out with us in TLC. If you're looking for a sobriety support community, we've got over 50 meetings a week there and hosts from all across the world, different backgrounds, different paths of sobriety as well. And I'm teaching a course there now called the Sober 90, which is a course for folks anywhere on your sobriety journey. We're using tools from life coaching and also leadership coaching perspectives, which are going to be very helpful for individuals learning how to lead yourself.
Mm.
So that's a really great course. The next round starts on March 1st. And then we also have a new course that's coming out. We start in just a few weeks. It's called The Sober Life. The Sober Life is geared more towards folks who have about a year on your sobriety journey. Essentially, before you take that course, you want to be very solid in the abstaining from drinking part, and maybe you're open to the emotional sobriety and also the day-to-day leading yourself, how to have better relationships. So it's really intensive on growth and development rather than how do I get sober? How do I start the sobriety journey? So Sober
Mm.
90, great tools for starting that sobriety journey.
Mm.
Sober Life, great tools for sustaining long-term sobriety. So both of those courses are coming soon. March 1st is Sober 90, and then February 5th is the Sober Life.
Great. Fantastic. So with all my guests, and I think you've touched on it beautifully, you've already said some wonderful things, but I always ask, what does thriving alcohol-free mean to you? So, Kiola, what does it mean to you?
Thriving alcohol free means that I live in freedom. I have no end to the possibilities for where my life can go. It means that I get to wake up feeling good, most days. I get to keep a smile on my face most of the time. And it means that I am able to just move through life the way I want to move without this thing holding me back. That is
Mm.
how I'm thriving alcohol free.
I love that. No, that's a really good answer. Thank you so much. Okay, so any last words of wisdom or anything you'd like to leave the listener with?
I will tell folks that this is one of the best decisions that you will ever make. It might not seem that way right away, but if you're willing to stick with it, you will see that living alcohol free is one of the best decisions you'll ever make.
And I couldn't agree more. I think you're absolutely right. And it's the best kept secret. So jump
It
on
really
board.
is.
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. And it's been a real pleasure to meet you and to chat to you. And thank you for all the wisdom you shared on nutrition and health and just, being alcohol free. So really
Yep.
appreciate you and hope to see you again soon.
Yes. You're welcome.
Well, thank you, Kiola. What a fab conversation. And I love the fact that she shared so many good tips and tricks about nutrition and brain and gut and sugar and movement, and really how you can live a whole new life full of freedom and wake up feeling good and open to new opportunities just by really looking at your nutrition and your health and fitness. So do hope you enjoyed that conversation. And if you have any questions or you'd like to hear anything else on the podcast, then do let me know. I'd love it if you could leave a review as well and share it with anyone who you think might be of interest to share it with. Okay, so I'm hoping I've got my voice back properly next week. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week and I will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Thrive Alcohol Free podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe so you get alerted every time I drop a new episode. I'd love it if you could rate, review, and share this episode. Feel free to tag me on Instagram at Thrive Alcohol Free and follow me for daily tips. If you would like to work with me, I offer one-to-one coaching sessions and have my signature Thrive Alcohol Free Society group coaching program. If you're not yet ready for coaching, I also have a self-paced online course, which is a companion to my book, A Cocktail of Clarity. All the links are in the show notes. I will see you in the next episode. Have a wonderful week. Take care.